Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Brad Wright from Chunker, and you're listening to the New Warehouse podcast. And my safety tip today for warehouses is to not stack pallets in your aisles, no matter how much pressure you feel, for lots of reasons, fire codes and everything else, very unsafe.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by the CEO of Chunker, Brad Wright. And Brad's going to tell us all about Chunker, how he kind of ended up there, what it is that Chunker does. They basically are taking unused warehouse space and turning it into money for people who have that unused space and making sure it's utilized in an effective way, both for the person that's utilizing it and also the person that owns the space. So he's going to tell us more about it, more in detail, and probably give a better explanation than I would, because he's the guy over there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about empty space in warehousing in general, and why there's so much out there, and kind of, you know, how you can utilize this service and be more effective in managing your space. So Brad, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Definitely happy to have you on and learn about this. Is a pretty interesting concept, and I think very cool. So why don't you tell us, I guess, first a little bit about your background and how you kind of ended up at Chunker as a CEO?
Sure. Well, I'll start with that, actually, because I ended up as CEO for all the right reasons, and it's because I started it and I hired myself to be the CEO.
Oh, okay. All right.
But all joking aside, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and Chunker's my third software company. And so I was kind of sitting around one day about 4.5 years ago, and had a friend of mine call me up who'd been a lifelong commercial real estate broker. And all he had ever done for that career is buy, sell, and lease warehouses. So he was intimately familiar with the problems, but he was also the furthest thing from a technology guy you could ever imagine. And so he knew there had to be a technology solution. And so he called me up, and I went over there and talked to him, and we came up with this idea basically to create this marketplace that's really an Airbnb for warehouses. And that was 4.5 years ago, like I said. And then we launched the site 2.5 years ago, January 2019. And then the rest is history. So that's how I got to Chunker.
Very interesting. Yeah. I think the concept is pretty, I mean, it's like a simple concept, but it's just like, somebody's got to do it, right? And have the idea. And I think seems like, really good pairing of, from the practical side of the commercial real estate side, and then obviously your technology background and expertise kind of coming together to making something really, really interesting and good for the warehousing space in general. I'm curious, what Chunker, where's the name Chunker come from?
So, back to the original story, as we were talking about this, I had the same kind of thought you did and thought, wow, this is really a super great idea. And it's so great, in fact, that there has to be other people doing this.
Yeah.
And so, I said, I'm going to go look into the competitive landscape, and I'm pretty good at it because I know ultimately that I'm the one that has to compete. And so we're out there. I spent a lot of time looking around and really didn't find anybody doing it. And so, the whole time, I was kind of doing this research, I was thinking about names. And, the key thing with a name, marketing just generally, is that you need to carve out mind share with people. And you want them, when they hear your name, to not forget it. And you typically have to spend a lot of time and money marketing to do that. And so I was really, focused on coming up with a great name. And the reason I came up with Chunker ultimately was because I came up with the tagline first: warehouse sharing one chunk at a time.
Gotcha.
And Chunker just made sense. And it's kind of mission accomplished. I mean, everybody that hears it, very few people ever forget that name once they've heard it.
Yeah. I mean, it sticks with you because it's kind of like, just like I asked, what is Chunker? Very interesting name.
Yeah. Warehouse sharing one chunk at a time.
Yeah. Very cool. So now you have this platform, and basically I think you just made the simple definition of it. It's like an Airbnb for warehousing space. But I guess talk to me a little bit about, how does the platform actually work? I guess from the person, whether it's a company that has some excess space they want to get some revenue from, or from the actual person that needs to rent some space. How does it work on both ends of the spectrum, and what can you expect?
Yeah, I mean, one, we spent a lot of time making it really easy. It's really, really easy to use. And, depending on, like you said, your point of view, if you have space, and we support any kind of player in the marketplace. So, there's tenants that have long-term leases and they have extra space. There's landlords that have empty buildings that are in flux. And, of late, we've even started repurposing big retail locations. And that's been really great, actually. But anybody that has space can log in, and we have a simple process of they create a listing and they publish it. And we have a wizard that kind of walks them along and makes it easy. I mean, the site is meant to be self-service from the minute you get to it, where you don't have to involve us. You can just hit the site and even ask you, do you need a warehouse or do you have extra space? Yeah. And then it guides you down that path. So anyway, they do a listing, and the listing's free. We don't charge anything for that. And then we're advertising out there all the time, and we generate demand. And so if somebody has a short-term need, and there's a million reasons why they do, they just go to the site, create an account, and search. And, they can search by location, they can search by criteria, how many dock doors, how big, all kinds of things like that, ceiling heights, a lot of different criteria. And that's, it's really as easy as it gets. Just click, and you see all the details. And if they delve into the details, they can see the price, they can see the minimum term these people are willing to do. Most people are willing to go for a month. We've done deals for a week and a couple of days, and deals for a year. And so it's the whole spectrum of short-term usage. And then, as we studied this, it wasn't enough just to be able to match people up. Typically, people have shied away from doing short-term deals because there's so much complexity, and they don't want to involve attorneys and the cost, and they don't want to, then they have to bill, and there's just all this stuff. And so that's why historically a short-term warehouse is super hard to get. But so in order to overcome that, we created the whole entire transaction platform. So once somebody finds a warehouse they like, they just have to click one button, book space now. And that starts the process. And we've done these warehouse deals in as fast as 15 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so we have all the documents. We collect all the information. They can even upload insurance information. And then we process all the payment. So they don't have to do anything. They click on the button, they fill out some fields, everybody agrees, and they sign it electronically. So it has electronic signatures.
Yeah.
And as soon as it's all signed, we then go collect the funds. And as soon as we receive the funds, we distribute them out.
So I mean, it truly is just like Airbnb. Basically,
it's exactly like Airbnb warehouses.
Very interesting. So I'm curious, when it comes into, because obviously, with warehousing, there's racking and things like that involved. I mean, is that something that people are including in the listing as well, or is it only including just kind of like raw warehouse floor space, or what's kind of like the average listing look like?
It's the whole gamut. We definitely have warehouses with racking. We have some warehouses with services. We have cold space. We have open space for like trucks that, not technically a warehouse, I guess, but it's part of that supply
space.
chain.
Yeah.
We have super old buildings that, nobody, and the newest of the new. And so it's the whole gamut, and it's just anytime anybody has extra space.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty interesting concept. And I mean, it's certainly, even with all the warehouses that we see now that are, I'm here in New Jersey, and it's just like they're building warehouses like everywhere, right? But you still see ones that are sitting empty, or, the lease sign has been on there for a year and a half, something like that. Like nobody's taking the space. So I'm curious, why do you think that there is like such a huge demand in supply chain, right? And to, all this e-commerce and everything, business driving, and, why do we still see like so much empty warehouse space that isn't really being utilized fully or utilized at all?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, so there's two parts to that question. The first is, why does a building sit vacant?
Yeah.
And they sit vacant for lots of reasons. And some of it's area, because location is still, for most people, enormously important.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But, when you look at a lot of the primary use cases for warehouses, e-commerce distribution is one of them. And, e-commerce is all about speed and automation. Yeah. And ceiling heights and those kinds of things. And a lot of the older buildings may not be able to support that. So they've got to wait for that kind of perfect tenant to come along. But the vacant building scenario is the least amount of space that we get, because, if you looked at the reports and studied the industrial market, it's less than 5% vacant. And there's lots of markets. I mean, like Salt Lake City is like 2%. Toronto, Canada is like I think the tightest market in North America right now.
Really?
They're like, yeah. But there's lots. LA area is like 2%, 3% vacant. But here's the funny thing is that number is only from the perspective of the landlords. Right. Because when a landlord does a lease, and it's a 10-year lease, it's fully leased to them, whether you ever move into that building or not.
Yeah.
The actual utilization of the building is the tenant's problem, not the landlord. The landlord, it's 100%. The tenant, they're the ones who deal with the supply chain disruption. When there's no chips being made, no cars being manufactured, it's the tenants that want to store stuff that don't have stuff to store because there's nothing being made to ship to them, or the people who stocked up their warehouses with alternators and everything else that can't ship them to the car manufacturers because they're not making cars. And so there's all that disruption. So it's the utilization of the tenant that drives Chunker, just like Airbnb. See, the rooms were always there. Airbnb just exposed space that was always there that nobody could get to. And that's what Chunker does. We bring the sharing economy to this class of assets where it's never existed before. And we really create this market for space that's there that everybody knew was there, but they couldn't get to. And the reason it's there is because of the things we just talked about, all those fluctuations in the supply chain, market economics. Some companies' products are out of vogue and they don't sell, or they leave a market and their building's empty, but it's empty to them, but not the landlord. He's still getting a strict check.
Yeah.
and so that's where Chunker comes in, is that we optimize the utilization of that space that there was no other way to optimize.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I love the way that you put it, is that, the space has always been there, but it's the accessibility that really hasn't, or like the knowledge of how to access it, right? Or access it in a smart way. The
visibility. I mean, in the good old days when people needed it, I mean, people solved this problem of short-term warehousing, but they could only do it through brute force. They would basically just have to go either knock on doors and say, do you have extra space, or call a broker. But the broker, is in a bad position because the broker doesn't know. The broker did the 10-year lease on the deal, and then he goes away and does the next deal. He doesn't know what the tenant's doing day to day. Yeah,
it's very true. Because I mean, you look at, you got an operation, maybe it's like 300,000 square feet, and company's only utilizing 200, and it's future growth into the 100, but maybe they're not going to use it for another 2 years, and you never know because it's an operation. You see trucks going in and out, and you just think like, oh, there's no space there. But then you walk inside, it's this whole empty space.
And what you just said is a super common case because the warehouse market's been so tight. Lots of companies, as they've done new lease, have taken down more space than they need, knowing it was going to be super hard to get it in a couple of years, and so they were willing just to pay that kind of tax, growth tax, while they figured out a way to utilize it, and they didn't have any other options. So now, until Chunker came along.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I think it solves a lot of problems because I guess you have like on two sides here. You have the one company that, like we just talked about, is looking forward to growth and not fully utilizing their space at the moment. But then you also have companies that are like busting at the seams and need extra storage temporarily or seasonally, and this kind of, I guess, marries those two and gives them a great partnership.
Well, and the fact is that guy bursting at the seams and the other guy with extra space could be 2 blocks away from each other. And they don't know it. There's no way for them to know it.
So, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I'm curious, what is what's like the smallest space? I guess I want to give the listeners like some perspective on how, because maybe some people are thinking like, I only have, a couple thousand square feet of space that is not utilized. Do you see people offering like small spaces like that?
Yeah, I don't think we have any sub 1,000s, but I know we've got some people have listed 1,000 and up. We have space from 100, from 1,000 square feet to 400,000.
Wow.
And it just, it comes and goes all the time but we have actually a pretty big demand at the, I'd say the 1,000 to 5,000 square foot level. It's a pretty steady and it's growing. I mean, it's surprising how much demand there is at that kind of small. Because as you know, in the warehouse world, because you use 300,000 as your example, 5,000, even 5,000 square feet is super small. A lot of guys think, why should I worry about that? You know? But the fact is that when you look at the average rents in the U.S. and Canada, and you add in all the different charges, you're probably at least $1 a foot. So if you have 5,000, 10,000 square feet there, it's costing you $10,000 a month just to sit there empty. And if it's 50,000, that moves the needle.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can certainly add it back into, your overall cost and help you kind of make that space into something,
Well, the money that Chunker generates, and you said it great. I think we're going to change our website. We just turn space into money. But the money we generate is pure bottom line profit. It is actually the definition of pure profit.
Yeah.
Because that was a sunk cost. They had to pay for that space, whether they used it or not. I mean, it was a fixed cost that they have to pay. And so if we generate them, so that's where like even rates come in. A lot of people get really super nervous. Oh, what's market? I need to charge a premium. The reality is you just need to charge anything that'll make you happy, because that's all straight into your pocket. Regardless whether it's market rate or not, who really cares? I mean, you get the choice of zero or something. Something is greater than zero.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think I see you love simplifying things. You simplified this market, and now you're just simplifying it as zero or something. That's good.
It's pretty simple. And what you learn, especially in the technology world, is people are busy, they're distracted, and you can't expect them to connect the dots. You've got to make the dots as big as you can and connect them yourself.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so I'm curious, you mentioned in there talking about, the rates and the market rates and things like that. Do you guys provide guidance on that through Chunker at all, or it's up to the person?
Not on the platform, I mean, not automatically.
Yeah.
We're actually going to down the road. It's one of those things on our roadmap to kind of automate that based on market conditions. But right now, warehouses just pop up all the time. Like I said, they all of a sudden just show up on Chunker because people find it, they list it. And so they have a feel for what they're paying and like I said, what it's worth to them. And usually it is at a premium, because the reality is that, it's kind of that theory of, buying wholesale versus buying retail. To buy wholesale, you have to buy a whole truckload of stuff, and take a big risk. Or you pay retail for it because you can want to go down to the store and buy one, and somebody has a whole, and so it's the same with short term. You don't have any risk. You just waltz on in there, stay for a month or two or three, and waltz on out without a second thought, where the guy you leave behind still has 10 more years on his lease, that he has to worry about.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm curious if you had I wonder if you have like any unique stories or like use cases that people have rented like empty space for like kind of weird or interesting uses.
We have a few of those. I mean, and we just kind of get them all the time. But one of the very first deals we did was for 2 days for a company to shoot a movie, some scene from a movie.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that was kind of cool, because you get to see all that. And we've had other nutty things. We had a huge retailer that needed 18,000 square feet for 2 months to store empty plastic totes. 18,000 square feet. 18,000 square feet of empty plastic totes.
Yeah,
and I have no idea what like crisis precipitated, the need for storing that many plastic totes, but they did, and it was important to them, and that's that's the kind of thing that happens all the time. I mean, and people, it doesn't matter sometimes how much you plan ahead. Like sometimes, like we're doing this deal in Atlanta right as we speak, and this company has 50 container loads coming in from Europe, and I don't think they knew exactly, with all the mess going on, when they were actually going to show up. Well, they're going to show up this week all of a sudden, and they didn't have space for them. Yeah, and so they call Chunker.
Yeah, Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty interesting, and I love the idea, and I love the fact that you actually just mentioned, somebody that wanted to film a movie, because it's not just. I guess it sounds like you don't just have to normally be utilizing warehouse spaces like a distribution company or something. I guess you could be using this space for something else too. So it's really a great thing. I mean, it's super smart, and I think it gives you the ability to, as you said before, take some space that you're not utilizing right now, and make some money and generate some revenue from it at least, and maybe put that back into your operation or back into the bottom line like you mentioned, or even just help reduce your overall leasing costs in general. So I mean, it's a really great concept. I'm curious, what's next for Chunker, and what's kind of like down the pipeline in the future.
Well, clearly the mission is to continue to grow and grow as fast as you can. I mean, just this year alone, we've added 13 states, from where we ended last year. And so we've got 43 states now we have warehouses in, and probably 175 cities. But, there's always more. There's 30 billion square feet of warehouse space just in the U.S. alone. So there's a long way to go. There's a ton of growth there, but we'll then start expanding worldwide. I mean, we're already international because we've got some spots in Canada. So
Yeah.
we've got that going for us, but we'll do a lot more. We'll be much more purposeful. We'll pick countries, and we'll start to expand globally.
Very interesting, and I loved hearing about it. I think the concept is super smart, and I'm happy you guys executed on it, and it's totally makes sense, and I think it's great for the warehousing industry as a whole, not just from a perspective of people that have space, but also from a perspective that people need space as well. So if we have some people that are listening, warehouse managers or something like that, and now they have found a way to make extra money for the company and they want to be a superhero, how do they find out more information about Chunker?
Well, I mean, they can go straight to our website, and we've got a phone number, 833 Chunker. We've got email addresses, and all the information's right there. It's the easiest way. Chunker.com.
All right, great. And we'll put that information on the newwarehouse.com as well. So, Brad, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about Chunker.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.